And it's setting it up to go live. All right. So, good morning. It's Daily Dose with Dr. Lazar. I have Christy Trader. She's my sister-in-law. One of my favorites, actually. One of my favorite sisters. So thanks for joining. Christy, you and I have always had some really cool conversations over the years. And what's awesome about it is we don't always agree on stuff, but we have mutual respect for each other, which I think the world needs to adopt a little bit of that. So as we get started, I wanted you on partly because of what you do for your work and like the work you're involved in on a regular basis. I'm not really calling you out of anything that you do this kind of stuff all the time. So why don't you share what your how you spend your time, and then we'll get into some of these tough conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spend my work time in schools, K through 12, all across the United States and in Guam. And I provide workshops to staff and students. They're typically anywhere from 1 day, 2 days. We go up to a week on some of them. We do some strategic planning and working with social emotional learning environments. Our big push is really to look at staff and students and talk about what does it look like to create a physically and emotionally safe space for students to come to school. And the reason that's so important, and I think we'll probably be touching on some of it today, is that we have, at least we know of 160,000 students a day that are staying home from school because they don't feel safe. The problem with that is that some of those students, a majority of those students, will also tell us they don't feel safe at home either. So some of them are staying home, but they're at their friends, they're in the streets, they're in various places. So our goal is to really, bring everyone together, make a sense of community, make people feel more comfortable having conversations that they don't typically have at school. Really to be able to push the pause button on curriculum and say, hey, what's going on in your life? Tell me about your siblings. Tell me about your parents. What do they do? What's your house like? So it's really, in my opinion, it's really important work. And I think it's especially important in the times that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, so the turbulence that's going on right now, that's probably not even a strong enough word. I was, doing some research, which is required. I'm a white male in America, so like if there's going to be unconscious bias or racism or prejudice or unfair treatment of anybody, in our home and our organization, we're really, 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 really clear on everybody matters, everybody's safe, everybody counts, and I don't think that's lip service. I mean, we've done foster care for several years, and we really, really try to be open and inclusive with people. And we're really, really conservative. So most people think differently than we do, and we're still okay with that. What's weird to me is I don't know what's so different about the George Floyd situation. I feel like it's actually gotten our society's attention. I don't really know what that's about. I'm not a sociologist or a psychologist, but I'm super sad for his family. And there are opposing views on that. Oh, has nothing to do with the fact that he's black. He was using counterfeit money. And if you just follow the law, these things don't happen. And I don't know. I wasn't there and I don't know what happened. But if those are facts, that's true. I mean, obeying the law is probably a good thing to do if we don't want, negative outcomes. Now, we shouldn't die. Like, we shouldn't die if we just, break the law either. So I'm not saying that. But then you have people on the other end of the spectrum that said the only reason it happened is because he's black. And full disclosure, I don't know. Like, we all have bias, we all have opinions. I don't know if that would have happened to anybody else. I don't think we can know. And so I wanted to have this conversation with you. One, I respect you and it's a safe place. And two, one of your sons is black. And so you have a very different perspective. All my kids are white. And so tell us about that. Tell us about your experience with that, and what you've observed raising. You literally have a white son and a black son, and that's got to create some different dynamic. So I'd like for you to set up what that's like so our
Yeah.
viewers can understand.
Sure. So I think, thanks for bringing up that last part, because I think it's important for people to have an idea of, who I am. And, I'll be honest, I'm a divorced white woman. And I have, like you said, two teenage boys. They both happen to be 16. And one is white and one is black. So it's really given us a unique perspective, not even on the George Floyd incident, but even on the COVID situation, and the disproportionate number of Black people that are being diagnosed and dying. So the reality in my situation is that not only is my one son Black, but he's also adopted. So he's got a whole unique story, which I think all of us have a unique story that just happens to be part of his unique story. I think that some of the things that we're learning from a negative perspective is that it doesn't matter how well dressed he is, it doesn't matter how respectful he is, how kind he is, how educated or friendly or loving he is. In this current state in our nation, he's not, going back to my work, I would say he's not physically and emotionally safe.
Mm.
um, and of course I can say that as his mom, and I don't know, like, as a child, I mean, we're talking about a teenager who's turning into a young man. I don't know how much of that he recognizes, because to your point, our family is all white, and so I think that he is raised in a sense of white privilege. And so it'd be curious to me to know, I think down the road, years down the road, like, what has the situation been like for him, and how is he processing it, and what is his perspective about how it's come about, and how he's kind of navigating through it, being the only Black person in our family.
Sure.
So I think there's a lot of instances in which he's been brought into, so I'll give a little bit more background. He's been brought into the States without a formal birth record. So we've had to, figure out what age he is. And I know that you've done some interesting research about the age, and you can share this because I know I might get it wrong here, but the age that an officer might think a Black male is. And I think some of it's based on.
They guess it. Police officers typically will guess the age of a black male at 3.5 years older than they really are.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's like perfect research. And I think, knowing my son, I would say, and I think you might probably agree that he looks older than he is. And we get that comment a lot from teachers and educators. Speaking to his education, he first started off in a very white conservative school system. I was incredibly naive to think that anyone would treat either one of my sons differently based on the color of their skin. And I think part of that is me wanting to assume the best in people. But it took years of me doing my own research and educating educators themselves to really understand the unique circumstances that, he's a Black boy in a predominantly white district. And as much as I wanted to believe the goodness in people, eventually, and you kind of know the backstory on this, eventually he was really basically pushed out of the system in a way that was incredibly uncomfortable. I mean, ostracized by, an adult staff member and administrators. And so I think our initial experience with the Black community as a white family was that you're not welcome. I think that's kind of like a good phrase.
So Olanda wasn't welcome, or you as a white family weren't welcome?
Mm. Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting question. And here's how, yeah, so here's how I'll answer. I'll say that Olanda in the initial school situation that he was in, Orlando was not welcome as a Black boy in America in that situation because it was predominantly a white um, demographic. However, your question is interesting. Were we not welcome as a white family? And I know we haven't even gotten to the George Floyd piece here yet, but us as a white family with a Black child, I would say my experience has been overwhelmingly positive in that we are given a different we're given a different look as a white family who has a Black son.
Sure.
It's almost like we're more fully accepted into the Black community because we have a Black son. So that piece is interesting to me, and I haven't really fully fleshed that out at all. But
I remember Carrie telling me, Carrie's my wife, for those watching, who at you guys, he had to go to the hospital at one point. And so you've got these two in Ann Arbor, Michigan, you've got two white women, a Black boy. And Carrie was telling me, like, they didn't know what was going on. They were like, who's the kid? Who are you? And then they ended up thinking that you were a lesbian couple with a Black adopted kid. And she's like, no, I'm the aunt. And they're like, oh, so he calls you aunt? And she's like,
because I am his aunt.
like, it was just, but you know what? It's true. Like, if it doesn't fit, I mean, this obviously could be several conversations, but I was in an airport unrelated to race, but as far as bias or not knowing what the heck to say or do, a good friend of mine from chiropractic school has transitioned from a genetic female into a man. And I saw this person in the airport. He approached me, said hello by name, and this was in Detroit. And I went to chiropractic school in Iowa. And so he was flying Moline, Detroit, JFK. And so just pulled me over. I immediately knew who it was. But it was, hey, Jonathan, how are you? And I looked and I was like, that was all that was said. And I was like, I can't call you Ann. What's up? How are you? And I remember thinking in that moment, like, do what you're gonna do. I'm glad you said hi. Like, I haven't seen you in years. It's wonderful to see you. But when Carrie and I are at a party, she doesn't remember anybody's name, and I'll say to her, "Hey, Carrie, you remember Steve, right?" I know she doesn't remember what his name is, but I'm gonna set her up for the win. And so I was thinking about that, and I thought, okay, newsflash, everybody has a worldview, and if whether your choices, behavior, responses, whatever, are different than somebody else's worldview, set everybody up for the win. Like, in your situation, hey, this is Orlando, this is my son. Or, hi, I was Ann, but now I'm Alex. And oh, hey, great. Thanks for setting me up for the win on that. And I think sometimes people just, whether it's grieving, like, hey, your family member just died. I don't know what to say. Well, cool. Thanks for saying that. Like, at least you're being honest. So I know I'm ranting here a little bit, but and I don't even know where we were. That just made me think that, your acceptance as a white family was, I mean, what does a win look like though for Orlando, for a Black soon-to-be man in this society?
Yeah. So I think just real quick, I think what's interesting about what you were just saying is that, and this kind of even moves back to the George Floyd incident, is that there's so much about our exterior appearance that dictates how we're talked to, how we're treated, the way that people look at us, the way that people respond to us. And that's in a host of different ways. I mean, like you said, right now we happen to be talking about race, but it's excuse me, it's race, it's gender, it's it's a host of things that we look at people. Does somebody have long hair, short hair? How do they style it? Are they blonde? Are they brunette? So funny little conversation. My two teenage boys that we're talking about were arguing over blondes and brunettes the other day. I mean, there's so much about our exterior appearance that dictates how we're treated.
That's true. That's true. And I mean, we had a policy in our office for a long time. I mean, until recently, and actually, Devin in our office, she's snuck this one past me, which is really a funny part of the team. But I have a stated policy in our practice that we don't hire people with visible tattoos. And
Mm.
and so I don't care if you have tattoos. It's not a moral compass issue. It's not anything other than that. I don't want anything distracting from the story. So if somebody's coming in and they're having migraines and they're worried and they don't know what's going on and they got, I don't know, beat up or dumped by somebody with a certain tattoo, and you see that and they see you and they're like, oh my gosh, like it elicits some response. I don't want anything to distract from the story that your situation matters and you're safe here. And so I don't care if you have tattoos, but I was talking to one of my other nephews about his social media behavior. And I just said, do you have a hard time? He was younger. I said, do you have a hard time having parents of girls you're dating like you? And he's like, yeah. And he's a really nice guy. And I said, well, clean up your act on social media because you look like a punk, you know? And he was,
Mm.
you're just a conservative Republican Christian, man. You can't expect me to be. I said, look, dude, my beliefs don't matter. If you like, you're old enough. If you want to get, this is exactly what I told him. If you want to get a tattoo of an eagle across your face, that is within your rights to do. You can absolutely do that, and nobody will tell you that you can't do that. But good luck finding a well-paying job. Like, I don't, whether you like it or don't like it, whether it's accepting or biased or closed-minded, there is a reality that exists. And if you want to be taken seriously, you probably should not get a big old tattoo of an eagle across your face. Like, it's
So
just,
where did you land? I'm curious where you landed in the office on the tattoo policy.
well, so Devin has visible tattoos, and she is like, she's amazing. Now, in her defense, they're like behind her ear. It's not,
Mhm.
she does not have the eagle tattoo on her face. But in her interview, her hair was down and I didn't see it. And what's
Okay.
amazing to me, you've taught me the concept. I mean, literally the words suspend judgment until you're better informed came from a
Yeah.
conversation you and I had. And that's been really impactful for me. But and I wasn't coming from a place of judgment. That was a, that was a branding and messaging and positioning, conversation about, hey, if you, I don't want you having, I don't want gauges at my front desk. Like, if you want to do it and play your techno and go to a rave, that's cool. You can still come swimming in my pool, but you're not going to be sitting at the front desk in my office, just like, and so, anyway, she interviewed with her hair down and was like, she to date is the best hire we've had, and definitely one of them. We've had some good hires, but I mean, she outshines a lot of people that are no longer working there. And part of it was because I was out of the way. It was the first hire where I didn't get involved until later in the interview. Carrie, that should tell you something. And Carrie and Kim and they were like, we love her. She needs to be on the team. And I was like, that's who I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody who, we would suck if that person is not on our team. That's who I want. And
Mhm.
we hired her. And then, like, I don't know, a few days later, she had her hair up and I could see a tattoo, a small one. But I was like, are you kidding me? Like, it was this huge, it was a joke in the office at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, you're fired. Okay, you're rehired, but you should have let me know you had this tattoo. So, unrelated. I don't want to be insensitive to.
No, no, no. I think it's a really great observation. And I think, the things that you're talking about are really important because, whether we like it or not, we have prejudices, we have implicit bias. And so I think, kind of coming back to this George Floyd situation and my situation as a white mom with a black son, it's really upon all of us right now, I think, to look at what are those prejudices, what are those implicit bias. Um, First of all, even just become aware of them and acknowledge them. And then I think second, to look and say, like, well, what role are they playing in my life and why? And are there some that, maybe do I need to think about changing them? Or am I okay with them? I mean, I think that, we all have a different worldview. We all have a different perspective, and none of them are right or wrong. They're just different. Um, in the particular, Black situation right now, I think that we know about systemic racism, and I can give you a link that we could post after this Facebook Live. It's a 4-minute video, and it talks about how there's disparities in family wealth, there's disparities in incarceration rates, there's disparities in political representation, education in the Black community. And I think you and I might have talked about before, the piece that's difficult with systemic racism is that there's no one entity or no one person that's overlooking this or leading this. And so all we can really do is we can look back in history and we can say, well, if we're honest and if we really look at some of the patterns, there's still slavery and there's Jim Crow laws that are affecting opportunities that Black men, Black women have today. And so there's some things that we can do to support systemic changes. So things like a reformed criminal justice system, ending predatory lending. This video talks about that, and that was such an eye opener to me. It was so interesting. We can talk about protecting voter rights. Public school funding is a huge one for me because I work in the school systems and I see the disparity. So, our public schools are funded by our taxpayers. If we were to make that independent of property taxes, we could totally level the playing field for a lot of students. Because I think that as much as, and this was something you and I had talked about, I don't know if it was earlier in the live stream or not, but as much as our choices affect our, I always talk about our choices affecting our consequences in life. And, consequences we think of as a negative storyline, but really it just means like this was the outcome of something that you chose.
Right.
As much as our choices affect our outcomes, we all have a different starting point. And again, that starting point is different. It's not good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just different. So, I think getting back to the George Floyd issue, the first question that we kind of landed on was, what does this look like as, a white family with privilege with a Black son? And I think it's kind of all of these things that we've talked about. It's really thinking and being aware of the prejudices that we hold. And, unfortunately, like you said, you and I can have this conversation and we can be completely civil about it and we can be on opposite ends of it. In one way, I would say, I think this George Floyd issue is strangely bringing together people because, and I think you'll know from a political perspective with COVID, there was such disparity, there was such huge differences on the political spectrum of, what is this COVID and why are we staying at home and why are we, closing down things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that there started to be a lot of infighting in communities. And I think that in the strangest way, one of the things George Floyd will probably be remembered for is bringing together communities that were at odds with each other. For different reasons, I mean, one is a health reason, one is a race reason. But I think regardless of what people think about all of the political issues surrounding George Floyd, I think I haven't spoke with anyone or heard of anyone on the news outlets or social media that says this was a justified killing. And I don't think that's the question, right?
Yeah. I've had people, when people heard that I was doing this, some people sent me things saying, this is why he should have died. And I wasn't
Wow.
going to bring that up because I don't, I value life. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but yeah, there are people that think it was justified, and there are, um, which yeah,
That's
that is part of
shocking to
trying to
me.
wrap my head around. Yeah, I don't understand that. Look, if you do something illegal, and you get arrested, you do something illegal and you get arrested. I'm not, like, yeah, I mean, but it's crazy to me. I don't even want to give that any life. I don't want to, say that. But the other thing is, to me, um, I take care of law enforcement. Um, and just like we can't stereotype and be reasonable with it. I have had a police officer get in my face, and like I thought I was gonna get beat up. Now, when I'm Middle Eastern, I don't know if that is different than white in this conversation. And when I'm tan, forget it. And I'll tell you this too. And my wife gets she is impassioned about being frustrated and and think that it's unfair, that I will, if you follow me through an airport, I get stopped every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Every time. I mean, pulled aside, stuff gone through, and I've got pre-check, I've got TSA pre-check, I've got clear because I travel and speak a lot, and I get pulled aside. And whoever is with me, so Carrie has done this where she will take some of the kids with her, and then I will take a kid or two with me. Whoever is with me gets stopped, gets swabbed for explosives, gets and she'll be like in their face. She'll be like, "This is insane. This is profiling." And I'm like, Carrie, nothing is gonna happen. Just
Mm-hmm.
here are my hands. I'm not gonna blow anything up. And
Yeah.
so I guess the thing is, that's not the same as having my life in jeopardy, and I'm not comparing that to like a lifelong struggle of disadvantage or anything like that. But I also will say that you're going to have to try a lot harder than that to get me distracted from my mission, purpose, and that sort of thing. So as we kind of bring this in for a landing, a couple things that I've noticed. First of all, I think that as a society, we can have differing views. We should have differing views. Like I don't know who came up with the concept that if we don't agree on everything, we can't be friends.
Right.
I think we need to grow the heck up about that one. The second thing I would say is, based on the research that I've done, and first of all, and I'm just going to say too, that I very much am grateful for law enforcement and for the people who are dedicated to keeping us safe. And I don't have a position here. I'm not playing anything. I'm not running for anything, but it's true. Like I mean, I remember the officer that called that told us my grandmother was in a near fatal car accident. I remember his name, and and maybe that's because I was raised to respect authority, and there are authority figures that have abused their authority with me personally. And so I'm not saying that everybody is the same, but I'm not so jaded and cynical that I think everybody is bad. Now, again, I have a different worldview, but I also have been raised that we've got to step it up. And true, fine, but I was explaining to the admissions or the director of marketing where I went to chiropractic school, and he saw my office and we had some meetings and stuff. And he said, "This is one of the nicest offices I've ever seen." And I said, "Man, that's weird, because I'm just thinking we need to update the paint and we need to whatever." And he said, "No, man, I mean, this is totally different." Well, then I realized my friend in high school, her dad is a chiropractor, and like the biggest chiropractor in our area, huge home, nice car, shopped at Saks Fifth Avenue. Like, so I guess that's what chiropractors do. I mean, I guess that's what chiropractors are. And then my chiropractor drove a BMW 750 IL. He had a Porsche 911 Carrera. He had a Corvette convertible. His wife wore a Rolex.
Yeah.
And I mean, in high school, that stuff's a big deal, man. I mean, I noticed that stuff, and I was like, wow, chiropractors must do well, right? So
Yeah.
that is my worldview.
Right.
That's all I know. And so I become a chiropractor and I hustle and hustle and hustle and hustle and feel like a failure because I'm not there, right? Like, and I remember getting this notification that our practice was 13th, 1-3 in the nation for collections, like highest collections, number 13 in the entire nation for chiropractic offices. My 6th year in practice, and I remember I was at Dairy Queen with my family and another family, and I was not present. I was super distracted. I was super discouraged. I felt like a failure. I was wrestling with this stuff, and we're not where we want to be, and we're not meeting our objectives. And I hadn't noticed the growth we had because I was just focusing on what I didn't have. And Oprah said, if you focus on what you don't have, you'll never have enough. If you focus on what you have, you'll always have more than you need. I remember her saying that. And so while I'm supposed to be enjoying ice cream on a sunny day with my family and another close family, friends of ours, I'm on my phone because I'm that guy. And I'm looking through and I see it said, congratulations, you're top 25 in the nation for collections in chiropractic offices. And I said, top 25? Reply, what was our rank? Not like, oh, sweet, that's amazing, my 6th year in practice. It was, what was our rank? And I waited. And the kids are like, Dad, Dad, Dad. I'm like, hold on a minute. It was very important. And then later, I get the email back that we're 13th in the nation. And instead of celebrating, I thought, I wonder what it's going to take to be number one. Now, full disclosure, I am not proud of that behavior. But here's the thing. That hustle, that drive helped us serve more people than, I mean, you don't get that without serving a ton of people. So there are good things that came from it. Here's my point. All I knew was that chiropractors were successful. Once I get into practice and start teaching and training, I realized I had a very limited view of my
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what I tell other people is the story of a student who showed up late to his advanced math class. The teacher had written 3 problems on the board. He sees these problems, he copies them down. It's a Thursday class. He doesn't come back till Tuesday. He slaves all weekend. He solves 2 of the problems, feels like a total failure, goes back on Tuesday and said, I realized like a math major must not be my thing. I couldn't even solve this problem. And the professor looked at him shocked and he said, those were 3 unsolvable problems. I wrote 3 unsolvable problems on the board. But he didn't hear the limiting belief that these are unsolvable problems.
Right.
And so I'm not burying my head in the sand. I have in the past. Part of this conversation is me saying, I want to wake up. And, a friend of mine and mentor and coach, Michael Hyatt, told me he's using the hashtag woke up late. And like, he's trying to get woke, but he's a little late to the party, And I'm the same way. So like,
yeah.
I don't want to bury my head in the sand, but I also want to encourage every people group, every race, every religion, every orientation, everybody to say, ask, I guess, what would happen if we let go of the limiting beliefs and said, you know what, maybe that's true, but what if I live like it's possible to rise above that? And that doesn't mean it's not there. But I do think that at some point we have to, as a people, say, you know what, we're better than this, we're bigger than this. And in my experience, if we focus on the problem, it's okay to get a diagnosis. But if we focus on the problem, I find more problems. If I pivot and focus on solutions, I have a much better chance of finding a solution. And so I want to encourage people that black men, if you're arrested, be respectful, hands up, don't show any sort of threat. This is based on research. Number 2, tell police officers what your age is. Tell them your name. Hey, I'm Jim Smith and I am 16 years old. Tell them right away. And then this is going to tick people off, but whatever. If my purpose is to help people live out their full God-given potential. And so if you're not beat up, arrested, shot, killed, if this helps one person, then you can be ticked at me. It's fine. But for people like Orlando, if your parents are white, now this is gonna tick people off, but whatever. It's based on research I did. Tell them your name, your age, and if your parents are white, tell them my parents are white. The reason, and that's based on research, that is not my opinion. And I can't see Facebook right now, but I can't wait to see that feed. I,
Well, I think
I
you
might get it up.
what you're bringing to light in just the last little bit of your talking and in the couple suggestions you had is this idea of prejudice and bias, and for some people, I think it's always important for them to hear prejudice broken down, like you are prejudging, just like you just gave us an example of the way that you prejudged something. I think that in my business, so my business name is Embody Kind, and the intent is that it's a really simple call, like in your body, inside of your body, outside of your body, in the thoughts that you have, the actions you take, the words that you say, embody the essence of what it means to be kind. Kindness is unbiased, right? I think that regardless of, I just posted something similar to this on my social media feed the other day, but it's like, regardless of what somebody looks like, what they think like, what they love like, what they speak like, what they pray like, what they vote like, love your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that simple, love your neighbor, be kind. And I heard a man the other day, it was a really great challenge to a group of young people. And he said, you know what? He said, at the end of the day, you can beat them. Um, you can beat others at something they can't beat us at. And that's loving kindness. And, so it's like, as much as our views might it might differ as much as our, ideas or our implicit biases or our prejudices might look different from one another. Be kind, have a civil conversation, love one another, and be educated. I think it's really important that you're looking these things up, that you're doing your research.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a good one. Well, I'm gonna pop over to Facebook and just see if there are any comments that we need. I think maybe I'll just reply to those in comments so we can wrap this up. Well, Christy, where do
Yeah.
people find you if they need your help on learning? Oh, I did have a shirt when I was in college that I might make another one that said "Mean people suck." Maybe we should do another one of these, and we
I
should
like it.
wear a shirt together that says "Mean people suck."
Mean people suck.
I think mean people suck, but I also think hurting people hurt people, and so my job is to help people not hurt, and then maybe they can, receive love better and give love better. And um, I'll go first. I don't have the answers, but I'll go first, and Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see," and if there's anything we can do, I know that puts onus on other people. I always hate that phrase. Like when there's a death of a family member and people are like, if there's anything you need, let me know. Like, okay, thanks. I mean, I don't know what I need. And so I don't want to put that on anybody and say, but if something does come up, I'd love to help use my platform or be a voice or whatever to help. Yeah, I mean, our biggest charge is, and we've had this conversation too as well, is everything can be answered if we look at the underlying call that we all have, is to love God, love others. Like that kind of that oddly takes care of it. So where do people find you, Christy, if they need your work or want?
Yeah, so KristiTrader.com, KRISTI, Trader, TRADER.com, and EmbodyKind.com. I'm on all the social media platforms, post pretty regularly, and we've got some exciting things coming up. We're revamping some of our in-person workshops to be virtual. So we've started out with a host of kids, mostly over on the West Coast, and we'll be bringing it this way soon. So
Very cool. That's great. Well, thanks for all you're doing.
and
thanks for being part of this. Have an awesome day.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks,
Chat
everyone.
with you soon.
All right.
Bye.
This is Daily Dose with Dr. Lazar. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
Bye.